This study by Phillip includes a room at a great height, such that it looks out over an enormous child standing up. So it could be a 15 or so at this scale building with huge corner office windows, and there are two eyes, one complete, well, one semi-complete in the drawing to the top right. It also looks a bit like a jet intake of some kind, but it is not that. It's the beginnings of an eye picturing. And the child is looking into the room, peering into the building, the corner room with a tiled floor and a sculptural object in the room that is a three-dimensional cross. It's a Christless cross, as my tutor has pointed out. The figure was originally intended to be, well, just a figure, so adult or something like that. However, it looks to be like a slender child also, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, something like that. A boy, probably, from the rear, and in some ways, in some picturing, but not necessarily so, he's taking up this sort of urinating position close to this cross. I didn't feel he was doing this when I drew him, but as I carved him out of the paper through editing and emphasizing certain parts of the outline and highlighting other bits and giving shadow and obscuring by shade other parts of his form, especially the ankles, and allowing the calves, without giving too much emphasis to his buttocks, but more perhaps to the shoulder blades. So the light is coming in, glancing, but his head is obscured, it's turned away from us. The head may be slightly turned to the viewer's right. The picture's left, I suppose, from within the space, looking out from that space, from the child anyway, from the larger child. So it's a picture of two scale systems. There's a very large scale of the enormous child outside, but this was to be painted. It's a sketch, a drawing for a painting, a very large painting of at least 2 or 3 meters tall, if I can make it that, with about 1.6, 1.7 meters in width. And I have my studio set up now, a painting wall set up to take such canvases. I have a painting wall that is 4 meters by 3 meters. I've not had a painting wall that I've been prepared to sacrifice from all the household things, shelves and desks and side and couches and so on along the wall. I have taken those away, and this is my living room wall, which is the sunniest studio space in the house. And I'm doing these large canvases with charcoal drawings sketched on the surface and rubbed into the weave of the canvas with my finger, so that the image is at one with the canvas. There are broad swathes of canvas left, so there's this feeling of very raw, rough, gigantic drawing image, gigantically drawn, sketched image. So it's done natively or nakedly, straight on the canvas, no real preparatory drawing, though this one is a kind of preparatory drawing, but alert to what happens on that canvas as I draw. So things in preparatory drawings are really just to warm myself up, to involve myself in the pictorial space or the symbols or the rendering of images, or to suggest further things as I go. And there may be layers of objects or semi-transparent objects or even real objects applied to the canvas in some form or other. I've yet to think of ways to attach things to a canvas, so that I'm thinking of how wire hooks of perhaps a sharpened form could be inserted as the canvas is installed in a gallery or a museum or someone's home, or whether I would leave canvas loops that I would stitch into the canvas so that objects could be hung discreetly in a hidden and yet not dishonest way from the canvas, to cut across any perspectival space. But I've thought of other ways to break up the perspectival space by what I call false lighting, which I've taken from William Hogarth's idea of false perspective from when was it, 1779 or 1790 something, that famous etching of his that he sent to his friend, where he demonstrated that, like M.C. Escher, that perspective on paper, that art can be highly artificial, that this is possibly what art is. It's an illusion. The devices of art are best revealed when there is an illusion, a delusion, an impression, playing around with perspective and drama and lights coming from all directions. So that in my case, I'm having some of the objects in some of the paintings lit in such a way that the shadows that are on the object are not necessarily reflected in where the shadow appears to fall on the floor or the ground beneath the object in its entirety, so that an object appears to be lit from the top left, but the shadow falls on the ground as if it's from the top right or from some other position entirely. And you can do this with a variety of objects across the surface and have this false light with all that means. False light, like telling lies or putting things in a false light, or telling the truth so that something appears in a false light, telling certain parts of a truth, but also spatially it sort of jiggles the space along somewhat, so that you can deploy various objects, various depictions of objects on the surface, and yet not have a consistent but an uncertain, an undecided spatial arena in which these objects are depicted or painted. So you really have a depicted picture. The picture is not picturing a straightforward impression of itself to the viewer. It's not mediating directly, but is depicting. It is taking apart its own structures of picturing and collapsing itself. So there's a kind of confusion. But I think that this confusion or depiction deconstructs the world and has it appear like deconstruction theory, like the world is. You're trying to get to how the world actually does come at us. And so here this is seemingly a surrealist drawing, playing with space. It's not playing with shadows and false lights so much, but this is where it began for me. But you have a figure turned away, appears to be urinating. It's a semi-religious cross, a place that a Christ could only fit with arms stretched towards you in one quadrant of this cross, or be hung from its cantilevered beams or some other such thing, or strung up, or tied to. So you could almost have the 3 or 4 thieves tied on the cross together on the corners, where it would be quite painful. But it's not your wooden cross, which has become, through overuse, a rather dead symbol over the millennia, and in a way is not probably the true representation of what the Christian religion is. I am not a Christian, though I do think that Jesus Christ is an amazing person. I would have him outrank Martin Luther King or Gandhi or Buddha very easily, very readily. More of a match for any of them in terms of wisdom and transparency and a lived life and a glorious death. It is a powerful life and a powerful story, which I believe to be, as real as anything is in this world. Now at the foot of the cross, here, in the shadows, there appears to be a very crude face appearing amongst the background tiles and the shadows and the shadings of the figure. A hand appears to be stretching up at right angles to the body, to underneath the short beam, a short beam of the cross, as if it was feeling it up or giving it the finger or something. It's quite radical in how it can appear, or the cross itself, though a very strict orthographic projection, is not in any way reproduced with strict accuracy. It's a drawn cross. It has the artifacts, all the artifacts of smudging and erasure of drawing, and it's not meant in any way to accurately, as it were, depict a particular or very specifically dimensioned cross. It's just a figure in a room that's in a huge building, probably 15 stories up, with a very pink, it was intended to be very pink, innocent, blue-eyed child looking in the windows like Alice in Wonderland. So it's kind of a treachery and betrayal of all that stricture, all that rigour of geometric painting and art. Some of the indices are crossed out. They were guides, and one is ticked, or some are, and even they are not reproduced with absolute strict rigour. They don't have to be. The shadows fall on them and change with their dark or light and things like that, and that's been sort of deliberately smudged and broken up so that one is not hypnotised by those Renaissance floor tiles that one sees in such scenes. This was drawn toward the end of the year 2013 as part preparatory work for a painting that I did execute, but it was entirely absent of that figure. I think there may be I think the room was drawn and the eyes, but I had physical objects, a drain tray, an old geometric stripe painting, and I think a hung vertically like a little cross, all of its own. There we are. We have our little event at the end here, and a window scraper with a window wiping sponge on a short stick, a short shaft, and that was red with bright yellow sponge, and the drain tray was yellow, and the stripe painting was yellow and blue, yellow and blue, yellow and blue, yellow and blue. So that contrasted with the black and canvas in it. Well, that is the removal from the wall of the drawing that was done in 2013, and this is Phillip O'Sullivan, who is giving a short account elaborating some of the thinking behind various drawings and paintings executed for the purposes of a very late art school career as a student in 2013, 2014, and perhaps some earlier from 2012. This is Phillip O'Sullivan from Massey University in Wellington, New Zealand, 2014, March the 27th, I think.